My name is Daniel Reeves. I'm a third-year medical resident now, but 2 years ago, when I was an intern, I spent 3 months on the night rotation at an old hospital that nobody wanted to talk about. What happened in that wing during those 3 months is something I have never told anyone outside the people who lived through it. This is the story. If I had any other option, I would have left after my first week. But internships don't work like that. You don't quit, you endure, especially when your future depends on it. I was assigned to the night rotation in an older wing of the hospital. Most of the staff avoided that wing unless they absolutely had to be there. Nobody ever said why. But you could feel it in the way conversations changed when somebody mentioned that floor. I wasn't alone, at least. Another intern, Lucas, was assigned the same rotation. We shared a small dorm room down the corridor from the old ward. Lucas was easy to be around. Quiet, didn't ask a lot of questions, didn't waste energy. The first 2 nights were normal, exhausting, but normal. Then the third night happened. I was doing rounds around 2:30 a.m. when I heard it. A voice. Faint, almost swallowed by the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead.
Doctor.
I stopped walking. I turned. The hallway was empty. Doors closed. Nobody at the nurse's station. They were on a break 2 floors up. I checked the nearest patient room. Empty bed. No equipment running. No patient assigned. I stood there for almost a full minute, waiting. Nothing came. I told myself I imagined it. I started walking again. About 40 minutes later, it happened again. Closer.
Doctor, please. Doctor, please.
I turned so fast I felt my neck pull. There was nothing behind me. The hallway just stretched out, empty and humming. When I got back to the dorm room that morning, I told Lucas about it. He didn't laugh. He didn't ask me to repeat it. He didn't ask if I was tired, or if I had been drinking caffeine, or if I might be hearing pagers from a different floor. He just looked at me for a few seconds. Then he said, "Don't follow it." That was all. He didn't explain, and for some reason, I didn't ask. A few nights later, I noticed something worse. There's a glass panel near the nurse's station that lets you see part of the ward. I was filling out notes when I happened to look up. In the reflection, in one of the patient rooms, there was something sitting on the edge of a bed, head down, still. I turned my head and looked at the actual room directly. The bed was empty. I looked back at the glass. The figure was still there, in exactly the same spot. My chest got tight. Then, slowly, the figure in the reflection lifted its head and turned to face me. I stepped backward and hit the counter and knocked over a tray of charts. The clatter echoed down the hallway. When I looked up at the glass again, it was just my own reflection staring back. After that night, I tried to avoid looking at anything reflective. It didn't matter. I started seeing them in the dark screens of monitors, in the metal of trays, in the windows at the end of the hallway. Always there, always watching. Lucas called me one night while I was still on the floor. "Are you back in the room?" "No, why?" There was a long pause. He said the chair just moved. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then I said, "I'm coming back." When I got there, the room looked normal at first glance. Then I noticed the chair. We always pushed it under the desk. Always. It was a habit Lucas had from his mom. Push a chair in. The chair was pulled out from the desk, turned to face the bed, like somebody had been sitting in it, watching one of us sleep. We didn't sleep that night. We sat on the floor with our backs against the wall and waited for the sun to come up. After that, it stopped being small. Files we'd left closed would be open when we come back to the desk. Pages flipped to the middle. Pens rolled off tables on their own, slowly, not from a tilt. One night, a wheelchair came down the hallway by itself. Slow, steady, the wheels squeaking faintly. It stopped right in front of me. I didn't touch it. I didn't move it. I just stood there waiting for it to do something else. It didn't. I had to walk around it to get past. We stopped going anywhere alone after that. Bathroom breaks, vending machine runs, charting at different desks. Whatever it was, we went together, but that didn't help either, because sometimes something walked with us. We'd hear footsteps behind us. At first, they matched our pace perfectly, step for step. Then they get slightly off, like whoever was back there couldn't keep rhythm. We stopped once, turned around together. Nothing. We stood still and held our breath. Then, one step, right behind us. We ran the rest of the way back that night. Both of us. Two grown men in scrubs sprinting down a hospital corridor like kids running from a bedroom closet. The old ward, the one even daytime staff avoided, was the worst. We tried not to go in there, but one night we got called for a noise complaint. A patient on a different floor said they'd heard screaming, so we walked over. The air in that hallway was different, heavier, cold in a way the AC didn't explain. Then we heard it, a scream, low, broken, the kind of scream that's been going on for so long the person making it has lost their voice. Lucas grabbed my arm. That's not normal. The sound was coming from a room halfway down the hall. The door was slightly open. I pushed it. The room was empty. No patient, no equipment. The bed was stripped down to the mattress, but the scream kept going. It didn't fade because we left. It faded because it stopped on its own. Slowly, like a tape running out. We didn't say a word the whole walk back. Even our dorm room stopped feeling safe. Sometimes we'd hear movement when we both knew we were the only ones in there. Soft sounds, weight shifting, like somebody adjusting themselves in our chair. We'd look up. Nothing, but the chair was warm. It was the last week of our rotation. We just had to make it to Sunday. That was it. On the second to last night, we were walking back to the dorm together. Quiet, tired, almost done. Then, clear as anything, right behind us.
Doctor!
We didn't turn. Then a second voice, lower, older.
You're staying.
The lights in the hallway flickered. The whole corridor went dark for 1 second. When the lights came back on, the hallway wasn't empty anymore. There were figures standing in every doorway. Some inside the rooms, some right at the door frames. Some halfway in the hallway, all facing us, all silent, all still. I counted at least 9 before I stopped counting. Lucas grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. "Don't look at them," he whispered. "Don't look at any of them." But it didn't matter. They were already looking at us. We ran. We didn't stop. We didn't look back. We sprinted out of that wing, down 2 flights of stairs, and out the side entrance into the parking lot. We sat in Lucas's car for an hour before either of us could speak. We finished the rotation. Barely. We never spoke about it again. Not really. Sometimes we'd be at a residency event together and I'd catch his eye across the room, and we both just nod, and that was the whole conversation. Lucas works in pediatrics now, in a brand new hospital. He told me once, very quietly, that he picked it on purpose. New buildings, he said. Nothing's had time to stay yet. I think about that a lot. I'm almost done with residency. I drive past the old hospital once a month on my way to see my parents. I don't stop. I don't even slow down. But sometimes, when I pass that wing late at night, I see movement in the windows. Figures standing inside the dark rooms, watching the road. I don't know if they remember me. I don't ever want to find out. My name is Marcus Hale. When I was 22 years old, I rented a cheap apartment with a roommate I almost never saw. His name was Aaron. He kept to himself. He kept his bedroom door locked. He almost never spoke to me. And what I eventually saw in his room is something I am never going to forget. This is what happened. I rented the place because it was cheap. Too cheap, honestly. I should have known. The listing said shared unit, quiet roommate, no disturbances. I was a second-year student. I was broke. I was tired. The price was almost half of every other place I'd looked at. I called the landlord and asked what the catch was. He told me, "The guy in the other room works at a garage, keeps to himself. You won't even know he's there." That part was true. I barely saw him for the first week. His name was Aaron, mid-20s, maybe older. It was hard to tell because he looked different almost every time I ran into him. Sometimes clean-shaven, sometimes with a heavy stubble. Once, I swear, his hair was shorter than it had been the day before. I told myself I just wasn't paying attention, but there were other things. He wore the same clothes for days at a time. The same dark jacket, the same stained jeans. There was a smell in the apartment that wouldn't go away no matter how many candles I burned. It wasn't bad hygiene. I've had bad hygiene roommates before. This was something worse. Something rotten. Like meat left out in the sun. It always came from his room. Room 2B. He never opened that door when I was around. He never let anyone inside. Always shut. Always locked. When we passed each other in the hallway, he wouldn't look at me directly. His eyes would flick past me, like he was watching something behind me, or waiting for something to move. One night, I came home from the library around 1:30 a.m. The apartment was dark, except for a thin strip of light under his door. As I walked past, I heard him talking. I figured he was on the phone, but there were no pauses. No yeah, uh-huh, the way people do on calls. He was responding to something, as if someone was talking back. "Yeah," he said softly, "I know." Then a long pause, then sharper. I said, "I know." His voice changed in that second. Got hard, almost angry. I didn't stop walking. I went straight to my room. I locked my door for the first time since I moved in. A few days later, I came into the kitchen early in the morning. Aaron was already there, standing at the counter, eating. There was a plate in front of him, something dark on it. I walked closer to grab a glass, and the smell hit me. Rotten, sour, sweet. The way meat gets sweet right before it turns into something else. I covered my mouth. "Dude, that's bad. That's gone bad." He didn't react. He kept chewing, slowly. Then he looked up at me, properly, for the first time since I moved in. His eyes were sunken. The skin under them was almost black. "You wouldn't understand," he said. He picked up another piece off the plate and put it in his mouth. I left the kitchen. I didn't eat anything that morning. I didn't eat anything in that apartment for the rest of the week. After that, things got worse, fast. I'd heard him talking to the walls, not on the phone, to the walls. Sometimes whispering, sometimes laughing. Once I heard him say, "She doesn't get to leave." That one stuck with me. I wrote it down in my notes app the next morning, in case I ever had to tell someone. I tried to spend less time in the apartment. I'd study at the library until it closed. I started looking for new places. I told myself I'd be out of there by the end of the month. I didn't make it that long. It was around 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was almost asleep when I heard something from his room. At first, I thought I was dreaming. Then it got louder. Crying. A woman crying. No woman had ever been in our apartment. Aaron didn't have visitors ever. The crying turned into pleading.
Please stop. Please stop.
I sat up.
Please don't.
A loud bang, something heavy hitting the floor. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. "There's a woman in my apartment," I whispered. "I don't know how she got here. My roommate has her in his room. Please, please come now." The dispatcher told me to stay in my room, lock the door, don't engage. I tried. I couldn't. She was still crying, and it was getting weaker. I opened my door. His was open, just a crack. Light flickering inside. The smell was thick. I pushed the door open. I'm going to try to describe what I saw, but you have to understand my brain didn't process it all at once. The room was a wreck, not messy, wrong. Old jars on the shelves with dark liquid in them. Black wax candles burned down to puddles on the floor. Symbols drawn on every wall in something brown. In the middle of the room, there was a figure built out of wood and scraps and what looked like wire. It was shaped like a goat, standing on its back legs. Its head was tilted at an angle that wasn't right. In front of it, kneeling on the floor, was Aaron. He was holding onto a woman. She was small, maybe in her 30s. Her hair was a mess. Her wrist was bleeding. He had her arms in a grip so tight I could see the white of his knuckles. "You're not leaving again," he was saying. "You promised."
I didn't promise anything. Aaron, please.
His voice snapped. "You don't get to leave me." I stepped back into the hallway. I whispered into the phone. "He's hurting her. You have to come. Please." The dispatcher said, "Sir, units are 2 minutes out. Stay where you are." Then I heard the sirens. Aaron heard them too. His head turned slowly toward the door, towards me. Our eyes met, and his face changed. The anger drained out of it. Whatever he'd been doing, whatever ritual he'd been working on, it just stopped. He went calm, almost peaceful. He started to stand up. The woman saw her chance and yanked her arms out of his grip and ran. She slammed into me in the hallway, sobbing, grabbing at my shirt, whispering.
Help me, help me, help me, help me, help me.
Behind her, Aaron stepped out of the room. He was smiling now. He took one step toward us. Then the front door of the apartment burst open, and 3 police officers flooded in with their weapons drawn, screaming at him to get on the ground. He didn't fight them. He didn't even look at them. He just kept staring at her, smiling. The woman was his ex-wife. I learned that later from one of the officers. They had been divorced for 2 years. She had a restraining order on him. She told the police he had been talking about rituals before the divorce, about sacrifice, about keeping things that belong to you forever. She thought he was just unstable. That night, he had broken into her apartment, drugged her, and brought her back to ours. The officer told me they had been looking for him for over a year. Multiple complaints, trespassing, threats. He kept slipping out of their reach. Different addresses, different jobs. He'd been right next to me for 3 months. The officer also told me something I haven't been able to stop thinking about. If you hadn't been home tonight, if you hadn't called us when you did, that woman would not have walked out of that room, ever. I moved out the next morning. Left half my stuff. I didn't care. I never went back. That was 4 years ago. His ex-wife and I are not in touch. The court let her testify with her face hidden. He pleaded out for a long sentence. I don't know exactly how long. I made myself stop checking. I'm okay now, but sometimes, usually late at night, I think about that smell, the candles, the goat thing built out of scraps, and the way he looked at her, kneeling there on the floor, like she wasn't a person, like she was something he owned, something he was getting ready to give to whatever that thing on the floor was. I am very, very glad I came home that night. I'm even more glad I opened that door.